Okay, so today we're going to do that that's from Beis Amud Aleph. Starting a new sugya. Actually, just finish off. We finished off from Beis Amud Beis all the way at the bottom. Amli Rav Safra Rav Abba. The last line from the bottom. So Rav Safra told Rav Abba like this. People keeping different minhagim in different places that don't keep the minhag, or the other way around. You come from a place that doesn't keep a minhag to a place that does keep a minhag. So he gives an example. He says, "Anan the adinon b'kfir the yarchu." So if that's what said, nowadays we have a Jewish calendar, meaning we don't go according to the moon, or even if we do go according to the moon, let's say Beis Din knows already when the moon's supposed to appear, when the middle is supposed to appear. So he asked regarding us that we know the Jewish calendar. If we know the Jewish calendar, there's no reason to keep 2 days Yom Tov. The whole reason why we keep 2 days Yom Tov is because of the suffix what day it is, Sfeik Diyem. What if someone knows what that this for sure knows Sfeik Diyem? He knows what day of the week it is. He knows what day of the month. He knows when Rosh Chodesh for sure was. So if he goes, if the place from one place goes, if people from one city that they know for sure when was Rosh Chodesh, and they go to a different place that doesn't know when Rosh Chodesh is, so do they have to keep to the Yom Tov or not? So you answered him, top from Beis Amud Aleph, by Yishuv le'avdinon. If you go to a place that the meaning is to keep 2 days Yom Tov, then you have to make sure to keep the meaning of that place. But in the Shina Machlekes, we don't want to make a Machlekes in the city, and we don't want to divide between Jews. So therefore, even if you knew in those days the different places are different minhagim, even if you knew when was Rosh Chodesh, for sure, because you have the Jewish calendar, you still have to keep 2 days Yom Tov if you go to that place. But by Midbar, if you go in the desert, meaning there's no one's watching you, what's the din? So Amalei, so you answered him. Rabbi answered him, Hachi Amar Rabbi, this is what Rabbi said. By Yishuv Asur, if you go to a city where people are there, then it's Asur to change for the minik. By Midbar Mutter. In the Midbar, in a desert, it's Mutter to do Malacha on the second day of Yom Tov because no one's watching you, and therefore, and we know he knew for sure when was it Chodesh, and that's why he was able to do the Malacha. So we see over here that you cannot change if you're going from one place to another. You cannot change from the minig Amakim. You get all the stringencies of the minig of the place that you showed up to. And the Gemara brings a story to illustrate this. Rav Nasan bar Asya Azam Ibei Rav. Rav Nasan, the son of Asya, went from the Beis Medrash of Rav. He went from the yeshiva to Pumbedisa. He traveled on Yom Tov to Pumbedisa. Now, traveling from where Rav from the yeshiva to Pumbedisa was going outside the Tchum. The Yom Tov Sheina Shatzeres, so this was on the second day of Yom Tov. Right? So he held the second day of Yom Tov is mutter to do Malacha, because he knows when Rosh Chodesh is. And since you know when Rosh Chodesh is, therefore he doesn't have to keep second day Shavuos. And he walked to Pumbedisa, which is a long walk outside the Tchum. So when he showed up to Pumbedisa, Shamter of Yosef. If Yosef was the Rav in Pumbedisa, he put him on Chedem. He said, listen, you're breaking the minig Yisrael to keep to this Yom Tov. I'm putting you on Chedem. Amla Abai told Rav Yosef, instead of putting him on Chedem, the rule is if someone breaks the Chedem, if someone breaks a Takana D'Rabbanan, l'chayda, he has to get Malkus. He should get Malkus Mardus, Malkus D'Rabbanan. But in Nagdi Mar Nagida, why don't you give him Malkus? Instead of putting him on Chedem, which is a more lenient thing, he should give him Malkus. Amar Leish, Rav Yosef answered him, I should give him Malkus. Adif delay. I gave him something much more stringent. Putting him on Chedem is much more stringent than giving him Malkus. How do I know that putting him on Chedem is much more of a stringent punishment than giving him on Malkus? Giving him Malkus, because he said the Maraba, because he said that this was in Babel. He said the Bata Dinim in Eretz Yisrael, the Beis in Eretz Yisrael, Mimnu Anigda the Barbei Rav. When someone goes against the rules, they give him Malkus, but they didn't dare to. They weren't so stringent. Mimnu Hashamta. They never put someone gave someone Malkus because they held the people in Eretz Yisrael held that giving Malkus is extremely stringent punishment, and that's why they don't give him Malkus. They're saying so. To my case, you're asking why. I put him. Sorry, that'll be wrong. They used to give people malchus. They never put someone on chayim. So you're asking why I never put Rav Yosef on chayim, or Rav Nasan on chayim? Because why never give him malchus? Because chayim is much more stringent than malchus, and that's why in Yisrael they don't dare to put someone on chayim, because chayim is more stringent than malchus. Some people say the story happened the other way around. That when Rav Nosson came to Pumbedis on Yom Tiv, Nagdid of Yosef. Rav Yosef gave him Malchus. Abai straight away asked Yosef, why giving him Malchus? Instead of giving him Malchus, give him more stringent punishment. Put him on Chayim. How do we know that Rav Shmuel, Rav Shmuel both said, if someone breaks the second day Yom Tiv, you put him on Chayim. So Yosef told him, that's a regular person. But over here, the story of Nosson Bar Asya, he's the Talmud Chacham. The Nosson was Talmud Chacham. The Tavale Avdi. So I did what's good for him. Because in Israel, they only give Malchus, but they don't put someone on Chem. So putting on Chem was a very stringent thing, and that's why I only gave him Malchus. I had respect for Talmud Chacham, so I never put him Nosson on Chem. So the argument, exactly what the story happened, but everyone agrees, and there's also argument. There's two ways of looking at it: if Chem is more stringent than Malchus, or Malchus is more stringent than Chem. But the Nukuda is that if you break second day Yom Tiv, it's a very stringent thing. Okay, we had going back to the Mishnah, a quote from the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that we had an argument, we had a discussion in the Mishnah between Chacham, Tanakama, and Yehuda. We had a case that someone brings fruit from Shvius and Shemitah, right? So then in Shemitah is that you're able to eat, let's say you have apples, you're able to eat apples in your house as long as there's still apples as long as the animals, or it's still the season of apples, in the apple season, you're able to eat apples even if they're from Shemitah. What if I go from a place and I go to London to Manchester? In London, there's still apples left, so it's mutter for me to eat apples, but I bring those apples to Manchester. Manchester, they finished already. So Manchester, the people in Manchester, it's us for them to eat apples now. So what do I have to do? Can I carry on eating my apples or not? So we said in the Mishnah that Chacham say you have to stop eating apples. You can't eat apples anymore. You're now the minig of Manchester. You have to eat the minig of Manchester. Rabbi Yehuda said a very strange statement, and we don't know exactly what it means. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Say v'havi lecha afata." We tell him he could tell the people of Manchester, "You also go to London and bring fruit," which is mashal. Rabbi Yehuda said that's mutter for him to eat apples. They're going to come and say that since you came to Manchester, it's us if you to eat apples. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Why is it us for him to eat apples?" Let him tell the people. He should tell the people of Manchester, "You want to eat apples? Do the same thing. Go bring fruit from London and import them to Manchester." So the Gemara asked him this. Last day, does Rabbi Yehuda not hold of the concept that we said it a few times in the Mishnah? That if a place comes and if a person comes to a place where the minig that they keep in that place is much more stringent than the minig of the city came from, so he has to keep the minig of that place. So l'chayda, how can Yehuda say that the person, if someone comes from London to Manchester and in Manchester it's ready also to eat apples, how can Yehuda say that he can continue eating apples? L'chayda, if he came to Manchester, he has to makabel the chumras of Manchester. So the 6 answers to this question. I'm going to go through slowly to try to understand what Yehuda meant. So the first answer is like this. Amar Rav Shisha b'derei Rav Idi. Rav Shisha, the son of Idi, interpreted the mission like this. Mulsa achrisi ka'amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is speaking about a whole new concept. Chacham is speaking about someone who goes from London, which is mutter, to Manchester, which is also to eat apples already. Rabbi Yehuda is saying a whole new concept. This is what Rabbi Yehuda is trying to say. Rabbi Yehuda is trying to say of a scenario that if a person goes from London, that it's still mutter to eat apples. Why is it mutter to eat apples? Because it's still the season of apples, that's it. And he goes to Manchester, and Manchester also is still the season of apples. And then after he's in Manchester, while he's in Manchester, so they're both mutter. London's mutter, Manchester's mutter. He heard that in London, Manchester, the season of apples is still there. But someone told him, by the way, the place you bought these apples from in London, the season of apples is over. And therefore you have to, therefore you have to burn the apples. Because even though in Manchester it's still mutter, and you are in Manchester now, but where these apples come from? These apples come from London. You bought the apples from London, they're London apples, and therefore you have to burn them. That's Chacham's opinion. So he gets the chumrah of not only if he goes to a place that's more stringent, he has to keep that minig, but he has to keep the minhagim of the place they came from also, which in our case, he has to burn his apples, even though Manchester is mutter, but since they came from London, they're us. Rabbi Yehuda comes to interpreting and say, no, say v'havi lecha afato mehecha dasino v'halei kalu lohu. Yehuda says that in this case, that he bought apples from London to Manchester. Since in Manchester right now it's mutter, he could tell the people of London, you want fruit? Go bring your fruit to Manchester, and it'll be mutter for you. So since he's able to tell, even though in London it's us, so we don't say that since he brought London fruit, the fruit stay us. So no, he's in Manchester. Even though the fruit came from London, he right now is in Manchester. He gets to keep the meaning of Manchester. And since it's in Manchester, it's mutter to eat fruit. He's also mutter to eat fruit. That's the first interpretation of the argument of Chacham and Yehuda. Chacham say that since the London fruit, they're usher, even though in Manchester it's mutter, and you are in Manchester right now. Yehuda says no. You brought fruit from London. You brought them to Manchester. You're right now in Manchester, so now it's mutter. I was thinking about the Meimer, so comes out from this way of interpreting that the argument in between Chacham and Yehuda, who's more lenient? Yehuda is more lenient. Chacham said that you have to burn the apples, and Yehuda says that's mutter for you to eat the apples. I was thinking about the Meimer that Yehuda l'kol kamar. You tell me that Yehuda is being more lenient. Rabbi Elazar says Rabbi Elazar said that regarding this mission, Yehuda is more stringent, and the way we explained it now, Rabbi Yehuda is more lenient. So we can't give this interpretation. What do we have to do? Allah epoch. So the only option the Gemara has, okay, so switch around the opinions. That what? That according to Chachamim, ein chayv levayir. Chachamim say you don't have to burn the apples. Why? Because you're mentioning us, so it's mutter. But Yehuda says, say v'havi lecha afata mehechad asinu v'akalu. So how we would interpret it, we could say Yehuda is trying to tell you that the people of Manchester tell this person who showed up with apples from London, listen, where do you come from? You come from London? The fruits in London are now also to eat. So therefore you also have to stop eating. So that's a second way of explaining the Yehuda's opinion. Before we explain that Yehuda is more lenient, that we tell people you're coming, we tell the people, the person who moved to Manchester, he tells the people from London, you want fruit, bring them to Manchester. Do like I did. According to what we're saying now, the Yehuda is more machmir. He's saying no, he can't do that. Adrabah, the people from Manchester tell the person from London, you're coming from London, your fruit are awesome. Abai is going to give a third answer. Abai says, no, really, we read the Mishnah according to its simple interpretation. This is what the Mishnah means to say. It means to say like this. It means that it's speaking about a scenario that someone brought fruits of Shemitah from a place from London, then London, the season is over. And he came to Manchester and the season of apples is still going on. Or another scenario is, if a person comes from London, which the season is still going on, so it's mutter for him to eat apples, and he comes to Manchester and the season is over. So now it's also for him to eat apples. What did this person do? He went one day from London to Manchester. He saw in Manchester the fruit apples are usher. Oh, I don't like apples being usher. So he went back to London. And in London, the fruit are still mutter. So in the chayv levayir, he's not chayv to get rid of the fruit, even though he came from Manchester. It doesn't matter since now he's in London. So even though he went to London, he brought mutter London fruit to Manchester where it's usher, came back to London. So Chacham say that you don't have to burn them because the fruit comes from London. You're in London, so therefore it's mutter for you to eat. Rabbi Yehuda argues and says, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, this person can't eat the fruit, even though in London now it's mutter to eat the apples. But we tell him, we tell this person, where are you coming from? Manchester? You're coming from Manchester. The fruit in Manchester are over. The season in Manchester is over. It's also for you to eat fruit in Manchester. So have our colorlay. So since you're coming from Manchester, it's also for you to eat fruit in Manchester. So if it's also for you to eat fruit in Manchester, just because you bring them back to London, you think it helps? No, the fruit came from Manchester. So that's the opinion. Come and say that's it. Even though you went to Manchester for one day, it doesn't make a difference to the fruit. It doesn't change the status of the fruit. They're still mutter. The Buddha says no. They went to Manchester. I don't care if they originally came from London. They went to Manchester. Manchester is usher. So even if you go back to London, so if you're Manchester, for sure it's going to be usher. But even if you go back to London, it's going to be usher. So the obvious question on that is, Maski Flaw, Rashi asked, the Fide Behuda, according to the Behuda, Ata Gaba the Chamna Kaltino. It doesn't make sense. A person has fruit which came from London. They grew in London. In London right now, it's much fruit. He takes it, he puts it in the back of a camel, and the camel passes through Manchester. It makes the fruit now usher. Just because they passed through Manchester, it went through the air of Manchester. If he stayed in Manchester, it'll be usher. But he came back to London. So since he came back to London, why should the fruit be usher? It doesn't make sense. In Behuda's theory, how can Behuda tell me that food that came from London and are right now in London, just because in the middle of the way in Manchester makes them usher? That doesn't make sense. So you have to come to a new explanation. Ella Amar Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi gives a new interpretation. He said the plug to the Hanitanoi that Rabbi Yehuda and Chacham are arguing in this argument. There's a famous argument regarding a machlekes Tanoi. The Tanya could be learned in the Mishnah. We learned in the Mishnah in Masechta Shvius. The Mishnah said like this: if a person pickles 3 types of fruit in the same pickle jar, he pickles tomatoes, pickles cucumbers, and he pickles mushrooms. Let's say, puts them all in the same pickle jar. In one jar. So now they're all sharing the salty water. They're all sharing the same liquid to be pickled in. So what does he do with what is the status of this jar? Meaning it's on Shvius, it's during Shemitah. So as soon as tomatoes are finished, the season of tomatoes is over, he has to stop eating tomatoes. As soon as the season of pickles is over, he has to stop eating pickles. As soon as the season of mushrooms is over, he has to stop eating mushrooms. The problem is he pickled all these things in one jar. So Beleza says, Eichlin ala Rishon. Whichever one goes out, whichever one the season finishes first. Let's say the tomato season finishes first. So then you have to stop eating the whole jar. Why? Because it's all one pickle jar, becomes one entity. Even though the pickle season, the cucumber season isn't over, but since it's one that's sharing the same juice, it becomes one entity, and therefore the tomato season is over. You have to stop eating even the pickles. If you're sure, Rabbi Yeshua says no. What do you mean? You could carry on eating tomato, you could carry on eating the pickles, and carry on eating the cucumbers, and carry on eating tomatoes, as long as one of the species, the season is still there. Let's say the mushroom season is still there, even though the cucumber season is over and the tomato season is over. But since it's one entity means that as long as one of the fruits, the vegetable season is still in, so you're able to eat from the pickle jar. That's the second opinion. Rabbi Gamliel says, no, we don't look at the pickle jar as one entity. Very simple. You have cucumbers, as you pickled cucumbers together with tomatoes and mushrooms. Whenever the cucumber season is over, you have to now take the cucumbers out the jar, the cucumbers out the jar, your pickles, and burn them. When the tomato season is over, you have to take the tomatoes out the jar and burn them. When the mushroom season is over, you have to take the mushroom out of this jar and burn them. So we look at each species separately. Okay, so now that's machlekes we learn, a machlekes tanoi. So the Gemara doesn't translate how we see this interpreted into our Mishnah with the argument of Rabbi Yehuda and Chacham. But Rashi explains that this is what the argument. Tanakama says, what did Tanakama say? Tanakama says that if a person brings fruit from a place, makom shekala, a place that the season is over, he has to burn the fruit. Is dafke if the season is over? Meaning, when we say the season is over, mashma, that the season of all the fruit is over. So we look at the jar as one entity. As long as one of the fruit is still in season, the season is not over for this jar. Since the season is over for this jar, you're able to carry on eating from this fruit, from this jar. Rabbi Yehuda says, what does Rabbi Yehuda say? Rabbi Yehuda says, no. Say, you yourself go bring back from your country. What does it mean bring back from your country? Meaning, we look at each species separately. You go, we tell each species, mushrooms, are mushrooms still existent? If mushrooms are still in season, so you carry on eating mushrooms. Pickles, are pickles still the cucumber still existence, you carry on eating from the pickles. So according to the Yehuda, it depends on if the season's over. According to the Yehuda, we look at the season's over for each vegetable by itself. And that's what determines the status of if it's mutter to eat or not. According to Tanakama, it depends if the general season's over, meaning the general season of your jar. What's your jar? Your jar is if the season of all the vegetables in the jar is over, your pickle jar is over, then you have to stop. As long as until then, you can carry on eating from all the other fruit. Even though the season of cucumber is over, but as long as the season of mushrooms isn't over, you carry on eating the cucumbers. According to the Yehuda, no. We tell them each vegetable, look at each vegetable separately. This vegetable is still in season, you carry on eating it. If it's not in season, you have to stop eating it. So that's I think the fourth way of explaining the argument in Yehuda and Rabbi and Tanakam. Okay, we're going to stop over here, the bottom of Daf Nun Beis Amud Beit and Nun Beis Amud Aleph. We'll continue tomorrow, the top of Nun Beis on Sunday, of Nun Beis Amud Beis. Have a good night.